In March 2024, in Georgetown, California, Talon Brooks and his brother, Wyatt Brooks, were out hunting in the forest. They knew the Georgetown woods like the back of their hands, having explored them since childhood with their father. Before allowing them to handle a rifle, their father made sure they first learned how to track animals and identify each species. It wasn't until they turned 14 that they mastered shooting with precision and successfully completed their first hunts. Trained by the best, the brothers became fully accustomed to life in the wilderness. Their natural bond grew stronger as they spent more time outdoors, hunting deer and turkeys in season and fishing for bass and trout during the summer. They also took pride in consuming what they hunted. Now 21, Talon had a busy schedule, juggling college classes and a part-time job. However, whenever he managed to get a free weekend, he always made a point of stopping by his parents' house to pick up his younger brother, 18-year-old Wyatt, for an adventure. On the morning of March 23, 2024, Talon received some good news. He didn't have to work and could take the day off. That gave him the perfect chance to do something he loved. He drove to the family home and talked with Wyatt. Together, they quickly prepared for a brotherly camping night. Since it would be just one night, they packed only the essentials, a large tent, flashlights, and of course, a rifle, before heading to the supermarket to pick up supplies. After that, they set off toward the Georgetown forest, a place they knew like the back of their hands. With the mountain weather beginning to shift, they arrived at one of their favorite camping spots, located relatively close to the road. They spent the first hour chatting excitedly, setting up camp, and getting everything in order. They had all they needed for a comfortable stay. Early in the afternoon, they decided to head out in search of animal tracks, hoping to make a successful hunt before nightfall. Talon had an exceptional tracking ability. He could spot even the subtlest signs left by different species. This time, they found evidence of wild boars. If all went well, they hoped to bring back one or two. As expected, within 2 hours, they successfully took one down and even found fresh deer tracks nearby. By late afternoon, they focused on transporting the dead boar back to camp, though they left some parts of the carcass behind. On the way back, they came across a stream where they washed their hands. Once at camp, they stored the rifle and secured the boar. After that, they ate and settled into the tent. Even though it was still early, the cold was intensifying, and with nightfall approaching, it was best to get some rest, especially since they needed to wake up early. However, while they slept, the scent of the dead boar attracted several animals to the area. Among them were coyotes and mountain lions, also known as cougars. The lion, in particular, could have easily scared off the other scavengers. The beast feasted on the remains of the boar left behind, but it wasn't satisfied. The predator followed the scent trail and arrived at the campsite. At first, it kept its distance, watching cautiously, a typical behavior for big cats. However, the strong smell of the boar was too tempting, and the human scent piqued its curiosity as well. A short while later, Wyatt stepped out of the tent to relieve himself. Sensing potential danger, the cougar chose to retreat, for now. During the night, nothing happened. By morning, the brothers were already up, completely unaware of what had been lurking nearby and the danger they had unknowingly faced. Hidden with the stealth only a predator possesses, the mountain lion remained in wait. After checking on the boar, the young men grabbed their rifle and headed into the forest. However, with so many hunting opportunities around, they decided to stay a bit longer. Since entering the woods the previous day, they had seen countless signs of wildlife. As hunters, it felt like a waste not to take advantage of the situation while they were there. But this time, they weren't the only ones stalking prey, and they had no idea they were venturing deeper into a mountain lion's territory. As they moved forward, the disturbed predator let out a low growl. At first, Wyatt thought it was just a truck passing on the nearby road, a sound common enough in the area. He didn't think much of it, and they continued walking, unaware of the imminent threat. It wasn't until they got too close to the lion's hiding spot that they finally saw it. But by then, it was too late. Driven by fear, hunger, and aggression, the mountain lion lunged from the undergrowth in a sudden, ferocious attack. Wyatt and Talon barely had time to reach for their rifles. The mountain lion's razor-sharp claws struck with precision. If not for Wyatt's thick jacket, he would have suffered a severe chest wound, but the fabric offered no protection for his exposed face. The animal sank its canines into his cheek, knocking him to the ground. Talon, realizing the danger, managed to grab his rifle. He knew he couldn't afford a single mistake. Any misstep could mean not only his own death, but also his brother's. However, with the lion attacking Wyatt so closely, he couldn't risk taking a shot without potentially hitting him. So Talon did the only thing he could. He dropped the gun and hurled himself at them, using his full strength like a football player delivering a tackle, hoping to break the assault. Startled, the lion released Wyatt. Talon shouted for his brother to run. Wyatt, his cheek torn and hanging, scrambled to his feet and bolted into the forest, running blindly. Amid the adrenaline and chaos, he didn't even realize his left eye had been displaced. With Talon's shouts and the lion's roars echoing behind him, Wyatt made it back to camp and, with great effort, managed to call for emergency help. Despite his severe injuries, Wyatt managed to report what had happened and give his location. However, as the adrenaline began to fade, the pain became unbearable, and he quickly lost consciousness. A few hours later, emergency responders arrived and found him unconscious inside the tent. He never woke up during the rescue and was transported to the hospital still unresponsive. Meanwhile, the search team for Talon was able to locate him quickly. Just a few meters from the campsite, they found him lying motionless on the ground, with a mountain lion on top of him. One of the officers fired a shot, startling the animal, which then fled into the wilderness. The authorities had no intention of killing the predator at that moment. If they had fired directly at the lion, they risked hitting Talon, whose condition was still unknown. As the responders moved closer to Talon, they saw the gruesome reality. His throat had been torn out, and the upper half of his body was so ravaged that it was clear he had been partially devoured. He had died a tragic and brutal death. Before nightfall, trackers located the mountain lion and put it down. Its face was still smeared with the blood of both young men, leaving no doubt that it was the same predator. A necropsy was conducted, though mostly for procedural purposes. Wyatt underwent multiple surgeries and may require more in the future. He survived, but his recovery will likely be long and arduous. The entire left side of his face had to be reconstructed. Talon gave his life to save his brother. In that moment, they were hunters, but what was meant to be an adventure ended in horror. Fate had dealt them a harsh lesson, one that revealed, in the most brutal way, what it truly means to be both predator and prey. In July 1892, in the Sonora region of Mexico, two brothers, George Neagle and Hiram Neagle, were tasked with overseeing one of their family's ranches. They were Mormon settlers who had left Missouri, USA, for the Mexican state of Chihuahua. Now, they found themselves managing one of their family's properties in Sonora. The local population was sparse, and wildlife posed a significant threat. While the region was home to species like deer, cougars, and foxes, one animal stood out above all: the massive and formidable grizzly bear. Weighing over 500 kilograms and sometimes exceeding 2 meters in height, these beasts possess colossal strength, razor-sharp teeth, and deadly claws, an ever-present danger in such a remote area. In recent weeks, George and Hiram had noticed that their ranch had become increasingly attractive to the region's predators. Their livestock was being hunted and devoured. George even claimed to have seen a grizzly bear dangerously close to the ranch one day. With these powerful beasts attacking their herds, the brothers, and by extension, their family, were suffering significant financial losses. They had already lost hundreds of dollars, an enormous sum for the time. George and Hiram knew they had to take action, or the situation would only worsen. Given the circumstances, they saw no other choice but to track down the beasts themselves. On the morning of July 22, 1892, the two brothers rose early and prepared for the hunt. Armed with rifles, they mounted their horses and set out in search of the creature that had been preying on their livestock. As soon as they left the ranch, it didn't take long to find signs of a bear, and a large one at that. George even suspected it might be the same bear he had spotted near the ranch days earlier. To cover more ground and increase their chances of finding the animal, the brothers decided to split up. They were experienced hunters, men of the land, and well armed. The way they saw it, there was little chance of anything going wrong. Before parting ways, they crossed the Gavilan River, which led to a small canyon. Not long after, near the base of a hill, George spotted a massive bear in the distance. He immediately shouted for Hiram to join him in taking down the animal. They grabbed their rifles and took positions to fire. Even from a distance, both George and Hiram fired several shots with their rifles. They shot from a considerable distance, but they believed the bear would soon succumb to its wounds. The bear appeared to have been hit. However, the animal tried to flee, dodging the bullets and taking cover behind rocks. Believing the ordeal was over, Hiram was relieved and called out to his brother to go together and check on the beast. But George was having trouble with his rifle's cartridges and stayed behind. Hiram moved ahead and quickly disappeared from sight. George, still distracted, didn't realize that he would soon hear 3 more shots. He thought his brother had shot the bear again and rushed to where Hiram had gone. However, when he arrived, he couldn't find either his brother or the bear. Even after calling several times, there was no response. It wasn't long before George found bear tracks and decided to follow them. He quickly realized the beast was still alive and feared for his brother's life. Determined, George began to search, and after a while, he reached a rise where he could get a better view of the surroundings. It was then that he saw the same bear he had shot just minutes earlier, chewing on something. He approached cautiously and, squinting to get a better look, he realized it was a piece of Hiram's clothing. Suddenly, everything became clear. George understood what had happened. Nervous and terrified, he got closer to the bear and tried to scare it away. It worked. The animal fled, and George immediately ran to help his brother. Hiram had deep wounds, claw marks, and bite marks all over his body. George then noticed the bear was coming back and wasted no time. He grabbed his rifle, aimed, and shot twice, one of the shots landing in the animal's head. Now the bear was truly dead. George returned to his brother, and only then did the gravity of the situation hit him. Hiram was not dead, but he was gravely injured. His head and body were mutilated. Alone, far from home, and with his brother's shattered body before him, George cried and prayed. He could see Hiram sitting, his knees hugged to his chest, his head lowered and hidden. Blood covered his entire face, scalp, shoulders, and was dripping onto the ground. Hiram asked for water, and George quickly ran to a nearby creek. He did his best to wash his brother's face and head. The top of Hiram's head was torn open, part of his skull visible. According to a letter written by George later, there were a total of 27 wounds on his head and face, and his right hand was completely mangled. George believed that only God could help them now. He asked Hiram why he had gotten so close to the bear, and Hiram replied that the bear wasn't dead as they had thought, but instead was hiding. The animal had come from behind and caught him by surprise. The 3 shots hadn't hit it. George urged his brother to have faith, and with great difficulty, managed to half-lay Hiram on the horse, guiding it slowly. Amazingly, Hiram made the entire journey without a sound of pain or complaint. By late afternoon, they reached the farm, where George did his best to tend to his brother's wounds. But Hiram needed more care, and George saw no other choice but to take him to town. Once again on horseback, George led his brother's horse, stopping every few minutes to give him a drink of water. They reached the town at 10 p.m. The incident had happened at 3 p.m. George went to the house of his friend, Henry Lunt, where he stayed with his brother. Franklin Scott, his father-in-law, helped tend to Hiram's wounds, stitching up the worst of them. Soon, others arrived to lend a hand. They used every remedy they knew, working with their limited knowledge and supplies. A messenger was sent to fetch a doctor, and everyone prayed for Hiram's recovery. To everyone's surprise, Hiram fought for his life. He took short breaths, saying nothing, not even groaning in pain. At one point, he glanced around as if preparing to say goodbye, and then he passed away. In his letter, George described how Hiram died calmly, remaining conscious until the end. He never complained or caused a scene. He was simply patient. The story of the Neagle brothers is a tragedy that resonates deeply. They were brave, but a moment of carelessness led them to the fate of every